So today's topic subheading is Satchidananda is the Guru and liberation by the grace of the Guru. So Sri Ramakrishna begins this conversation by saying, because Mani had made a remark a few minutes before that there are 8 kinds of bonds, 8 fetters which bind a human being in this world. It's a very common Vedantic concept that as long as this 8 Ashtapasha, it is there in Tantras as well. Ashtapasha means 8 obstacles to spiritual progress, or 8 types of bondage which prevent a man for a person from realizing his own self. So what are these 8? One is hatred, dvesha. Then there is shame, lajja. Actually, Thakur used to say lajja, grina, bhay, fear, ancestry, that I belong to this particular ancestry, I belong to this particular uh, family, a prestigious family. Though you may not have qualities of that, what your ancestors had, but still you pride yourself because of your birth in that family. So ancestry is also a bondage, a kind of bondage. They are a kind of fetter. Fetter means some kind of chain that binds you. So that is a popular concept. So when Sri Ramakrishna was told by Mani that there are 8 types of bonds, he said, no, they are not bonds, they are fetters. Fetters means it is a chain. So you can unchain yourself. Bondage is something different. Chain is something which binds you temporarily, but if you are keen to remove it, you can remove it. So what are those? Hatred, that is grina, that is hating something which you dislike. Shame in the sense you are not frank enough. You feel ashamed of many things. That is because of the ego. You don't have to be ashamed of things which are natural to you. Why should you be ashamed? But shame is also a fetter. It's a kind of obstacle to spiritual progress. Then pride in one's own ancestry. That is a particular type of pride. And then in general, pride. If you are proud of anything. So pride itself is a negative quality which prevents you from realizing God. Then there is fear. A person who is always fearful will never make any progress. Then there are people who are secretive about everything. They are not open, they are not frank. So this secretiveness also is a disqualification. So people who are making spiritual progress, they are very open-minded, they are not secretive. Then there is a question of caste. Caste in the sense caste superiority, that I belong to a particular caste. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna did not like to identify himself with a particular caste. He said all devotees belong to only one caste. So this caste differences by birth was not encouraged and is not encouraged in any kind of spiritual sadhana. And then finally, grief. So when a person is suffering from a lot of grief for some whatever reason, because of loss of a near or dear one, or maybe some other things which he should not grieve for. That is why the first thing Arjuna was told by Sri Krishna is, don't grieve over anything that happens. A war has to be fought, you have to fight the war. There will be victory, there will be, somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. So there's no question of grieving for any person or anything. So these are the 8 fetters which prevent hatred, shame, pride in one's ancestry, general pride, to be proud of your possessions, proud of many things. Then there is fear and secretiveness, that desire to keep everything to yourself, not disclose. Secretiveness is a sign of weakness. Why should anybody be secret? The life is it should be like an open book. What is there, we are what we are. We don't have to appear what we are not as what we are not. There's no compulsion for us to do that. We need not do all these things, because that secretiveness comes only when you want to show yourself as something which you are not. And Sister Nivedita sometimes used to say that 90% of our energy, she said it honestly, she said 90% of our energy is spent in trying to prove to others what we are not. If we just decide that we will be what God has made us, we have our gunas, we have our likes and dislikes, we have our characteristics which are unique to us. We don't have to imitate anybody. We should be what we really want to be. And there should not be a sense of shame or secretiveness in that. So with that idea, these 8 fetters have been described in the scriptures. So Sri Ramakrishna says they are not 8 bonds, they are fetters, chains. The very idea, the difference, that's why he's correcting. Sri Ramakrishna was so particular that if Mani or somebody else used words casually, he could not utter an untruth even by mistake. So he used to just tell these people that he's telling M here in particular that they are not 8 bonds, but they are like 8 fetters, something that has chained you, but you can unchain yourself. And then he says, by his grace, by God's grace, all these 8 fetters fall off all at once. It's not that you will first lose hatred, then you'll lose your pride, and then grief, and all those things will not go one by one. If his grace is there, if God's grace is there, then all these fetters can fall off. They can fall off all at once. You know what it is like? Then Sri Ramakrishna is giving one favorite example of his, which he gives very often in the gospel. We have seen it before also. It is just like all darkness is dispelled in a moment when a light is brought into a room that has been dark for 1,000 years. So if for 1,000 years something is dark, the room is dark for whatever reason, it was perhaps never lighted up, but suddenly somebody comes and lights a lamp. Will the light come slowly? It will, because it was dark for 1,000 years? No. Whether it was dark for 1,000 years or 1,000 seconds, it doesn't really matter. As soon as the light comes, everything becomes bright. So also grace is like that. When God decides to bestow his grace upon you or anybody, then all the darkness of ignorance vanishes at once. All these fetters fall off. So that gives human being a lot of hope. So we have to go on praying, we have to go on praying, go on doing japa, and hope the grace of God will be showered upon us someday or the other. And all the darkness which we have accumulated through the ages, the darkness of ignorance. Darkness is not the physical darkness, but it is something, it is also in Patanjali we discussed, it is known as avidya. So avidya is something which gives rise to asmita, that is egoism, and that egoism further gives rise to raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha. We saw Patanjali has not made this classification into 8 fetters. He says there are 5 fetters. He has generalized all these 8 different. There are different ways of explaining what are the causes of ignorance, what are the causes of bondage. Each system, each theory. Yoga says there are only 5 kleshas. Kleshas means impediments or obstacles to our attaining to the state of yoga or pure consciousness. So what are they? They are avidya, which is ignorance. Here Thakur is comparing it to a dark room. So ignorance is enveloping us. We take a matchstick and by Guru's grace, it will be removed all at once. It is not that it has to be removed slowly. The matchstick, the light when it is lit, when the matchstick is struck and the lamp is lighted, the whole room becomes lighted. It does not become in by bits and pieces, that one corner of the room is lighted. The whole room is lighted. So also this grace of God, when it comes, all these fetters, no matter how many chains are there, they will all fall off, not one by one, but all at once. Haven't you seen the magician performing his feats? Thakur now gives another example. Making knots in a cord, that is one of the favorite magic techniques which normally magicians do. There is some kind of trick involved, but they do it. He ties one of its end to something and holds the other end in his hand. Then he shakes the cord once or twice. When he gives a jerk, all the knots in the cord untie. So Sri Ramakrishna has observed this kind of show. Though sometimes it is very difficult to understand how the magician does it, but there is a trick. And all the knots are untied. So when he gives a jerk, all the knots in the cord untie. But others can't untie a single knot, howsoever much they try. It's only the magician who can do it. But if we try to repeat it, if we do not know the trick, and we tie the knots and then try to pull, the knots will become tighter instead of untying it. But magicians can untie it. Of course, they know the technique. Perhaps they tie the knot in such a way that they'll all be untied. But common people can't do it. So it's only the magician that can do it. So similarly, it is only Ishvara. If we try, we can perhaps not get rid of these 8 fetters. It is God's grace alone which can remove all the ignorance all at a time, not one by one. Just as the magician just pulls. He does not sit and untie one knot and second knot. That is how the magic is normally shown. If he did what we could do, then it's not magic. So the Guru or the Sachidananda or the Ishvara is like a magician. He can untie all the knots at the time. No matter if there are 8 fetters, all the 8 fetters will fall off. Whereas others, ordinary jivas, they cannot untie even a single knot, leave alone 8 knots at a time. Even a single knot they cannot untie. Howsoever they may try. So Sri Ramakrishna gives these 3 examples. One is lighting a lamp in a dark room, and the ignorance goes all at once. The darkness goes all at once. It does not go by bits and pieces. And then the magician, he says, ties so many knots. It appears that there are so many knots in the thread. If we try to do it, we can't. We have to untie it one by one. Even then we may not succeed if it is tight. Whereas the magician, somehow, he just pulls one end. That is how he is trying to demonstrate the magic. And he will untie all the knots. So all the knots open in a moment by the grace of the Guru. Then we come to a topic which M has mentioned here. Sri Ramakrishna, the agent of change in Keshav Sen. All of us know Keshav Chandra Sen was the founder of, not founder, he was one of the leaders of Brahmo Samaj. And he had certain, based on the Brahmo doctrine, there are many things which they were not supposed to, as part of their dogmatic belief. They were not supposed to worship idols. They were not supposed to go to temples. They tried to preach a different kind of religion. And Keshav Chandra Sen was one of the prominent people of that Brahmo Samaj. But after meeting Sri Ramakrishna, just as people from various sects, including his gurus, Totapuri and others, when they came, you will find that there was a change in them. So whenever he came, whenever Keshav Chandra Sen came, he used to behave differently because his disciples had seen him in a particular mood, or because he was leading that Brahmo Samaj at that time, and the dogmas they have fixed, the principles that they follow, he has to practice them. But somehow when he comes to Sri Ramakrishna, all those things go away, and because he somehow was attracted to Sri Ramakrishna. So Sri Ramakrishna is mentioning this fact. Well, how has Keshav Sen changed so much lately? Tell me. He used to come here very often. He learned how to bow down here, because even Swami Vivekananda, when he went to Sri Ramakrishna for the first time, they were not supposed to bow down before deities or even sadhus or holy people. That is a tradition they found superficial. They did not want. So according to the Brahmo doctrine, you should not be bowing before anybody, or before any idol, any image of God in a temple. But somehow, after coming regularly to Sri Ramakrishna, he started bowing down to Sri Ramakrishna. He must have seen something great in him. So he says, one day I said to him, sadhus are not saluted the way you do it. One day I was going to Calcutta with Ishan in a carriage. This is Sri Ramakrishna is saying what he told Keshav Chandra Sen. He had heard many things about Keshav Sen. How beautifully Harish has expressed it. All the checks have to be cleared here. Only then will the bank cash them. Thakur laughs. So Thakur says that some people say such things about me because they observed that even a die-hard Brahmo, in fact a leader of Brahmo Samaj, even his disciples were shocked that how can he break the rules in front of Thakur and show so much devotion, bow down. So somebody trying to explain this, Harish said, checks may be issued by different smaller branches, but only the bank can cash them. You can't encash the check anywhere. So that means if people can go to any place, but finally they have to come to Sri Ramakrishna to solve all their quarrels, to solve all their differences, and understand the essence of spirituality. So Sri Ramakrishna, like a child, is trying to say that is the reason perhaps he has broken his own rules. The rules which he had framed for others, he himself has broken, and here he comes and bows down before me. So Mani listens to all this conversation. Mani means M, Master Masha. He has understood that Satchidananda himself clears the checks in the form of the Guru. So in this case, Sri Ramakrishna is his Guru. So if the Guru does some favor to somebody, it is because of the power of Satchidananda. It is he who does it. The main check is cleared only in the bank, and that is Satchidananda. Then Sri Ramakrishna continues and is telling all the devotees, Sri Ramakrishna says, please don't reason. Who can know him? Totapuri said, his Guru, Advaita Guru. I have heard that this universe is created out of only a portion of God. That is the famous Upanishadic dictum. So what you see, the universe that you see, is only a part of the glory of the infinite God. So he says there is no point in using our silly intellect, limited intellect, to understand his Leela. Even if we wanted, we can't do it. Our mind has limited capacity. Through reason, we cannot know him. We have to know him if he showers his grace upon us and if we can experience. So Hajra, who was one of the devotees there, is inclined to reason a lot. He calculates that the world is created with so much and so much is the remainder. So just as some businessman calculates, oh, this is how the world functions. We are certain, we try to be certain about things which we can perceive, which are gross, and we make calculations thinking that this will happen, that will happen, and all those things. Whereas in the kingdom of God, there is no such thing as, it looks like uncertainty. There is certainty, a different higher kind of certainty, but only the God knows. You may call it God's will, or you may call it destiny, or you may call it the divine will. So Sri Ramakrishna does not like that attitude. He says Hajra is very calculative. When I hear his arithmetic, that you do and God will give you this, you do this, God will give you this. He's not a businessman. So Thakur never liked Hajra's argument. He used to confuse the devotees, that are those devotees who were coming to Dakshineshwari, because he used to sit near the gate and try to give a piece of advice to everybody without them seeking his advice. So sometimes he used to come and try to give some advice to Thakur also. He had absolutely no experience. He had read some scriptures, and more often than not, he used to confuse others. So he says, when I hear his arithmetic, his so-called understanding of the scriptures, which thought that God is somebody who believes in give and take, like you give money and buy goods, you give goods and take money. That kind of give and take, it may be okay in business, but it doesn't work that way in God's world. So Sri Ramakrishna used to get irritated when Hajra came and used to tell him that this is how God's will works, this is how God acts. And he used to give very lengthy explanations. He says, my head used to reel. My head begins to ache when I hear this Hajra arguing and with so much of certainty, claiming that he knows how God works and this is so much how God has created. So he has read some, his knowledge is second hand. He has read certain things and he thinks that scholarship is enough for him to understand the whole creation. So he then Sri Ramakrishna says, when he comes to talk in this way and hear Hajra speaking in a very worldly manner with all arithmetic and all worldly wisdom, he says, I know that I know nothing. That is the famous Upanishad says that he who knows that he knows nothing, he really knows. Because it is impossible to know reality through the mind. It is only through intuitive experience that one gets the grace of the Lord, and through the grace of the Lord or through the grace of the Guru, one's ignorance is destroyed. So sometimes Sri Ramakrishna says, sometimes I think of God as good and at other times bad. How can I know him? Then M says, then M is sitting there. So he agrees. He says, yes, true, sir. Who can know him? One knows him only as far as one's intellect can go. But he thinks he has understood it all. We do not realize that our knowledge of certain things will be limited to our intellect. Our intellect may be very sharp, but it is not sufficient. It is just as you say, an ant went to a mound of sugar. This is another beautiful example Sri Ramakrishna is giving. He says, an ant goes, there's a very big mound of sugar. It may be small for us, but for the ant, it is like a huge mountain. Compared to the ant size, the mound of sugar with a handful of grains look like a very big mountain. Just a grain of that sugar filled the ant's stomach. So the ant could eat only one grain. Unlike bigger human beings who can take teaspoons of sugar, for him, one grain is enough. And yet, the ant, out of ego, the ant says, next time I'm going to carry the whole mound to my home. It cannot even digest one small grain. It is too tiny. But the ego says that I will carry this whole mound. That is what this mad chase for money, wealth, and property, and all those things, that we want to try to understand the infinite with our limited minds. We want infinite wealth, we want infinite power, infinite glory. We want more and more. That means we have that inherent desire, but unfortunately we look at it or try to get it at the wrong place. So the ant thinks that it can carry the whole mound of sugar to its carry it home. Home means a small place where it tries to store one grain or a few grains. At the most, it can carry a few grains and keep them. It cannot possibly take the whole mound, which has millions of sugar grains. So he cannot do it. So Sri Ramakrishna is trying to give this example of the ant and try to convince the people that no matter how much you try, you will not be able to understand the whole of the God completely. For that, you have to transcend your mind, which the Manomaya Kosha, the restricted or the limited part of existence that you are. is trying to understand the illimitable. That is not possible. Once you give up that limited thing about yourselves, once the ego goes, ego is that quality within us which restricts us. It makes me think that I am this body, I am so and so, I do such and such a thing. So in with that ego, we cannot become infinite. But the moment you give up your ego, you become one with the infinite. So Sri Ramakrishna says, can one know the Lord? Only self-surrender is the way. Sri Ramakrishna says, who can know him? I don't even try to know him because it is futile. I can't take my silly limited mind and try to understand this infinite God. So what is the solution? Sri Ramakrishna says, I simply call Mother, Mother, let her do her will. If it is her will, she will let me know her, otherwise not. And then he says, I have an attitude of a kitten. So he's distinguishing, he's giving these wonderful examples. A kitten only calls out mew mew. Its mother may place it anywhere, maybe in the kitchen or on the master's bed. A little child only wants its mother. It doesn't know of her riches. It doesn't even want to know. All it knows is that it has a mother. So it doesn't worry. So Sri Ramakrishna is hinting that just like a kitten depends on everything. If the mother takes him and puts him in one place, the mother cat, it will stay there because it knows when there is some danger or some need, mother will bring me food and feed me. So the small kitten, that is self, a person who has surrendered to the Lord, this attitude of self-surrender, if it is perfected, it's not very easy to surrender everything to the Lord. Our ego will pop up again and again. We will think, we will try to imagine that we can solve our own problems. That is why it doesn't work. So there's a funny saying that when God sees that you are exercising your own will, he says, fine, carry on. When you can't do it, you come to me, then I'll solve. But if you think out of egoism or for any other reason that you understand everything and you can solve your own problem, God bless you, you go ahead. So also the kitten, but the kitten in this case doesn't have the capacity, nor does it want to do anything other than what the mother does for her. And he says, the son of a housemaid also knows that he has a mother. When he quarrels with the son of the master of the house, he says, I am going to tell my mother, I have a mother. I also have the attitude of a son. So Sri Ramakrishna is saying, the faith of a child in his mother is so much that a housemaid who is working in a landlord's, say, house or somebody's house, so that small boy is quarreling with the child of that family in whose house this housemaid is serving. But the child doesn't know. He thinks his mother is all in all. So if there is some quarrel between the two children, just as the child of the owner of the house or the landlord says, I have my mother, I'll tell my mother or tell my father. So also this young boy, not knowing that his mother is just a housemaid, she doesn't have any authority or power here. But still, he is proud that he has a mother, whatever may be the capacity of the mother. So such childlike faith, he says, I'm going to tell my mother, I have a mother. So for him, the mother is everything. When that attitude comes, as Sri Ramakrishna says, he used to do that. When he got confused, for example, somebody came and told him, Hajra, for example, said, you are so much attached to these young disciples. So he really thought, believed it, then went to mother. Then mother said, no, no, don't worry. It is because you see the divine spark in them, the divine Narayana in them. It is only because of that. you are attached to them. If you don't see Narayana in them, then you will not be attached to them. So you don't have to worry. It's not an attachment. It's attachment to God. Because of your attachment to Ishvara, the Supreme, the Satchidananda, that all the people who have that divine quality come to you and you also entertain them and like them. So placing his hand on his chest then and pointing to himself, Sri Ramakrishna tells M, well, is there anything here? What do you say? Now just to test the faith that M has developed. M has been coming only for a few months or maybe a year. So Sri Ramakrishna now wants to test his faith. So he says, what do you think about me? I mean, anything here? He never used to utter the word me or mine. He used to use, point out to his own body as if it is a third person. And he says, what do you say about here? Here means this thing. I am not the possessor of the body. It is mother's wish that this body should do something. So what is your opinion about this? Pointing to the body is to tell. He never used the word I or mine. So M is speechless as he looks at Thakur. Perhaps M is saying, perhaps means Sri Ramakrishna. He is saying to himself, M is thinking that Sri Ramakrishna perhaps thinks that it is the Divine Mother that is living in Thakur's heart. It is the mother who has taken up his body for the good of mankind. So this idea comes to M when he hears Sri Ramakrishna's dependence on the mother, Divine Mother. He says everything happens by a divine will. So a sadhaka or an avatara or a great prophet, they unite their will with that of the Lord. So there's absolutely no difference. There's no disconnection between the Lord's will and their will. So M has now got this feeling that Sri Ramakrishna's will and mother's will are the same. So many times you will find Girish Chandra Ghosh or some other disciple saying, when Thakur used to say, I don't know anything, it is mother's will. Then sometimes they used to get upset. They had come with some problem. They said, no, why is it not your will? Your will and mother's will. Is there anything different? Both are the same. So uniting one's will with that of the Lord is possible only when the ego is reduced or attenuated to a large extent. Then you feel more and more things are happening by the will of the Lord, not by your own will. And as I said, Sri Ramakrishna also used to give some wonderful examples. He says, if you think your will is working and you will do this, you will do that, if your ego is very strong, then God doesn't interfere. Not that he doesn't want to help, but he says he is able to help himself, let him do. So he gave another example, if you know. He used to say that once there was a wonderful, I mean not a wonderful, there was a very strong breeze, strong wind, and the hut of an old person, it was shaking. It was about to be blown away. Then he called some deity, thinking that the deity will save his house. And when he was restless, he wanted the Lord to come immediately and respond. That's how we pray. We think there is a solution, easy solution. We pray and Lord will come and help us. When he saw that the Lord is not coming, because there are many gods and goddesses in Hinduism, he started calling another god. Then like that, then finally he got disgusted and nothing happened. So that our faith, our self-surrender is not total. If it were to be total, then there would not have been any issue. So now we come to a new topic, Sri Ramakrishna and Keshav Chandra Sen in Lily Cottage. Lily Cottage is the name of the house where Keshav Chandra Sen stayed. It's now a memorial, it is still there. Kamal Kutir. Kamal means actually not Lily, but they used to call it Kamal Kutir. But the English name which was given by Keshav, he did not call it Lotus Cottage, but he said Lily Cottage. Lilies and lotus have many things in common. So perhaps that while translating, it was popularly known as Lily Cottage in English, but the original Bengali name was Kamal Kutir. So the topic now, subheading of this, is in front of Keshav's house. That is one heading. Then he looks for you with a yearning heart as you come. Now, what does it mean? It is the heading taken from a song of Jaydeva. Jaydeva is a singer who wrote many wonderful songs about Sri Krishna. So that yearning heart, the viraha which gopis and all the devotees of Krishna exhibited for him, he used to express that in poetry. And one of the headings of his song is, he looks for you with a yearning heart as you come. As you come, if you really have a yearning heart, you don't have to bother. God will look for you and he will search you out and then come and rescue you. But you have to have a yearning heart. And then the other subheading is Keshav Prasanna Amrit. Amrit, I think, is the son of Mahendralal Sarkar. His name was Amrutlal Sarkar. So in short form was Amrit. Umanath, Keshav's mother, Rakhal and M. So these were the few people who had assembled in Kamal Kutir. That is, Kamal Kutir is Keshav Chandra Sen's house. So Kamal Kutir actually should have been translated as Lotus Cottage. But here the popular English name was Lily Cottage. And this is known as, the north of Lily Cottage is Mangal Badi. Mangal Badi means a auspicious house. Badi means house, Mangal means auspicious. So a number of Brahmo devotees live there because they would like to have their houses near Keshav's house. Keshav lives in the Lily Cottage. His disease has worsened. So he was suffering from some disease. And most people say it appears that there is not much chance of his recovering this time. He was sick many times, but this time it was his final illness. And he was quite old also at that time. And Sri Ramakrishna was very fond of Keshav because he was a simple person with a guileless heart. Though for administrative purposes, he could not follow certain things, but he broke all his rules and bowed down before Sri Ramakrishna. He was so much, he had so much faith and so much respect for Sri Ramakrishna that he did not mind what people will say. His disciples were sometimes shocked. How can Keshav Sen, who tells everybody Brahmo Samaj did not want people to bow down before somebody, before an image or before anybody. But here, because of his wonderful devotion, because of his humility, Sri Ramakrishna was very fond of Keshav. He is coming to see him from Dakshineshwar Kali temple, and devotees are pacing outside. They are all awaiting his arrival. He was an important man, no doubt. Though he showed so much humility, but when he came to Thakur, he became like a child. He left all his ego, though he was the leader of Brahmo Samaj at that time. And in front of his followers, which is a very difficult thing to do, he used to bow down before Sri Ramakrishna. So all the devotees who knew him, many of them had come to see Keshav. So anyway, Sri Ramakrishna, because he was very fond of Keshav, it was a very big event. Whenever he came, all the meetings, if you see in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna loved him dearly. So, because of his wonderful nature and deep spiritual qualities. The Lily Cottage is situated on the western side of the circular road where he is walking. He has been waiting since 2 p.m. He sees many people on the road. The Victoria College is situated on the eastern side of the road. A number of ladies from Keshav's Brahmo Samaj and their daughters study in this Victoria College. One can see deep into the school building from the road. So M is just giving a description. To the north, there is a big garden house inhabited by an English gentleman. So the English people also used to live on that same road. The devotee on the road has been observing for a long time that there seems to be some misfortune in the house. A little later, he sees a coachman and a groom in black livery bringing a hearse, that is a dead body. These arrangements have been going on for the last 1.5 hours. Somebody has died, somebody has parted from this mortal world, and hence all the arrangements. So seeing the dead body being taken out in the house next to that, the big garden house, the devotee wonders. Devotee means it may be M himself, but very often he changes his name to Emani, M, a devotee, just to show that. So the questions that arise in his mind, he is trying to express it through some pseudonym or some other person. So he was perhaps wondering, where does one go when one leaves the body? Very often when we see cremation or maybe the burial of some beloved one, then we start thinking, at least temporarily, we become very thoughtful. What happens when one leaves the body? Otherwise, we are so busy that we don't even have the time or patience to think of all these things. So now M is, because he has seen a corpse being taken out of an English household nearby on that street, and they are there for 2 hours, they were just preparing to take out the body. The devotee wonders, devotee means perhaps M himself. A number of carriages rattle southward. The devotee is keenly watching them to see if Thakur is in one. So many carriages are going, so perhaps he thought even Thakur is going there somewhere in one of the carriages. It is almost 5 o'clock when Thakur arrives in a carriage. He is accompanied by Latu and 1 or 2 other devotees. M and Rakhal are also present. So he is giving a description of the situation there. Keshav's family members lead Thakur upstairs. There is a wooden cot on the veranda south of the drawing room. Thakur is invited to sit there. Sri Ramakrishna is in Samadhi and he is talking to the Divine Mother in ecstasy. That is the topic now, because as soon as Keshav comes, Sri Ramakrishna was normally inclined to talk about the Divine Mother, because he knew that though he was a Brahmo Samaj, he did not believe, he was the leader of Brahmo Samaj, and outwardly he had to tell people that he did not believe in the idol Bhavatarani Ma and all those things, but he was internally, deep within the heart, he had a great respect and faith in Divine Mother, and he used to do secretly, he used to do sadhana also. But nothing was hidden from Sri Ramakrishna. He knew that Keshav, because of, to satisfy the public, he never made a show of his devotion. But he knew that Sri Ramakrishna knew that Keshav Chandra Sen was, in the heart of his hearts, he was secretly doing some kind of sadhana without his followers coming to know, because the Brahmo devotees would not accept the principles that they have enunciated for the Brahmos. They had their own prayers, they did not believe in doing puja and other rituals, whereas Keshav used to repeat the Divine Mother's name. So Thakur has been sitting here for quite some time. He is impatiently awaiting Keshav. Keshav's disciples tell him humbly that Keshav is resting, but it will not be long before he comes, because he had a very serious disease. And the disciples and the members of their family therefore are very careful. So though he would like to go and visit, they were preventing him from going, or even if he goes, they would see to it that he doesn't spend much time. And for the same reason, Thakur was getting more and more eager to see Keshav, because he also perhaps knew that his end is very near. The Sri Ramakrishna says to Keshav's disciples, look, what is the need for him to come? Why can't I go inside to see him? Normally, you see Thakur's humility. He said, if he cannot come, if he is sick, why should you people strain him and bring him here? I can go and see him. But Prasanna humbly says, no, sir, he will be here shortly. So Keshav, he loved Keshav so much that he did not want to disturb him. He said, if he has some issue, he has some sickness, I don't mind going, and if he wants to see me, I can go there. So Sri Ramakrishna says, go on, you are making an unnecessary fuss. Just let me go in. So Sri Ramakrishna said, don't believe in all this, don't be bothered about all these formalities, that he should come and meet a holy man. I don't believe in that. I will go and see him. So Prasanna talks about Keshav to divert Sri Ramakrishna's mind. Now Prasanna does not want his own guru or Sri Ramakrishna to go, though he may, he is behaving like a child and he is absolutely no ego and is ready to even go himself. Prasanna just tries to divert. He said, if Thakur decides once that he has to go, he will go. So Prasanna says he is in a different state of mind. I mean, Keshav is trying to explain to Thakur why you should not go now. Let him be a little normal. Let him. They thought that he was exhibiting some kind of abnormality, Keshav Chandra Sen. He is in a different state of mind. He talks to the mother like you. The mother speaks to him. He listens, he laughs and cries. So this was a little strange for them, because Keshav was never seen to be in such ecstasy. He used to hide his spiritual feelings, but somehow he was exhibiting towards the end of his life. Like Thakur. Thakur was like that right from the beginning. So Keshav talks to the mother of the universe. Hearing her, he sometimes laughs and sometimes weeps. But ordinary people did not understand his ecstatic state, that he is seeing something. They think he has gone out of his mind. Why is he behaving like that? Laughing at one time, crying at another time. So, but Thakur has understood that this is a result of a highly divine state. So he says, Thakur is overwhelmed with emotion on hearing this, and he quickly passes into Samadhi. So hearing the high spiritual state of his disciple, not disciple exactly, but a devotee used to come regularly. He does not see Keshav Chandra Sen as the leader of Brahmo Samaj. Anybody who loved Mother, the Divine Mother, was dear to him. So anyway, hearing Keshav Chandra Sen's state, he understood that that is the result of deep devotion to the Divine Mother. The state of ecstasy he is experiencing is a great sign. So Thakur is happy because he is his guru, and he becomes very emotional and passes away into Samadhi. Sri Ramakrishna used to vary now and then. Any slightest spiritual emotion or slightest contact with some spiritual ideal or idea would take him into Samadhi. It is winter, so Thakur is clad in a warm coat of green Kashmiri wool and with a shawl on it. This green coat is still there, it is preserved. It was in M's house. Now the Master Mahashay's house has been handed over to the mission. So there was a big, beautiful glass cupboard where they have kept all these holy things. One of them was this green coat. Somehow M got it after the Mahasamadhi of Thakur. So this warm green coat, which was made of Kashmiri wool, which is a very fine kind of wool and very warm, and a shawl was there over it. Thakur was wearing that warm coat because of winter, because it was winter. His body is erect, his eyes are fixed, he is completely merged in Samadhi. He remains in this state for a very long time. His Samadhi is not coming to an end. It is evening. Thakur comes down to a somewhat natural state. A lamp has been lighted in the adjacent parlor. Means it was dark, so they have lit a lamp. They are all trying to take Thakur to that room. It was with great difficulty that they managed to do so. There is a lot of furniture in the room, a couch, chairs, coat hanger, and also a lamp. Thakur is made to sit on the couch. As he sits down, again he loses his outer consciousness and he merges in ecstasy. So this bhava was very common with Sri Ramakrishna. So even the least idea or the least idea or the incident that Keshav Chandra Sen is experiencing some kind of ecstasy because of his devotion to mother, that makes Sri Ramakrishna so happy that he himself merges into samadhi now and then. He goes into ecstasy, thinking of the wonderful experiences that Divine Mother has given to Keshav Sen. So casting a glance on the couch, he mutters something like one intoxicated. So it was this kind of behavior which made Girish think that he is drinking some very strong liquor or wine. He says, what kind of wine does he use? I have tried all the strong wines. When Girish was very new, he, seeing Sri Ramakrishna's state, he said that this can happen only if one is fully drunk. Then Sri Ramakrishna told him, I will give you a wine which is stronger than all the wines that you have taken. And that wine is the name of the Divine Mother. Once you have tasted that wine, then you will not, all the other wines of the world, the lower things will fall away. So, Sri Ramakrishna butters something as if he is intoxicated with something. It was of some use before. What is the need for it now? So Rakal has come now, and then Sri Ramakrishna is talking about the vision of the Mother of the Universe that he had and the conversation with her regarding the immortality of the soul. So what does Thakur behold as he talks? He says, oh good, so you have come, Mother, how you show off in your Banaras sari. So he's seeing a vision, and in front of everybody is talking in this train. And he's seeing this Divine Mother in a Banaras sari. Mother, please don't trouble. Come and sit down. Do sit. And in that ecstatic state, the bhava, Sri Ramakrishna is continuing. Brahmo devotees are all watching him. Latu, Rakhalem and others are also seated near him. Thakur talks spontaneously in the state of bhava. And he gives a wonderful example, and then we'll conclude. He says the body and the soul. Because just before we saw a dead body a corpse was being taken from that English house, and they were taking it for funeral. So somebody, it was in M's mind thinking, what happens? As I said, only when the gross body falls, when we happen to witness this, then we start thinking deeply about the body and the soul. What is the connection? Where does the soul go? So Sri Ramakrishna is giving a wonderful example, or conveying a wonderful idea based on giving some wonderful examples also. He says the body has come and it will go, but the soul is immortal. Then he gives an example. That is the greatness of Thakur. After every explanation or every philosophical discussion, he will give a parable so that we understand the significance of that theory or that philosophy. So he says the soul is immortal, but the body can come and go. It is like a beetle nut. If the nut is ripe, its shell does not adhere to the nut. In the unripe state, it is very difficult to get the shell apart from the nut. When you have seen her, when you have attained to Mother, body consciousness vanishes. One feels that the soul is separate from the body. So a beetle nut or any nut has some kind of shell. So the shell and the nut are attached if it is raw. But once it is ripe, in the unripe state, In the raw state, the shell and the flesh inside are attached to each other, even coconuts and other nuts. So only when it becomes ripe, slowly the shell gets disconnected from the flesh. That is when you break the coconut or any other nut open, and then you get the fruit inside, the dry fruit inside. So very difficult to get the shell apart from the nut when it is unripe. So he says the body consciousness, this example is conveying one idea, that as long as you have a body consciousness, we feel that we are one with the body. The soul feels, just as the flesh and the coconut shell or any shell are not separate, they are attached to each other in the unripe state. So also, if a person has not realized, then one feels that the body and the soul are one. But once the body consciousness goes, in that state, in the ripe state, the nut and the shell, they are separated. So that is what happens when one realizes the Atman, and he realized that the soul is separate from the body. So after saying that, Sri Ramakrishna enters the room through the eastern door. Then there are so many other, so much of description what happens to Sri Ramakrishna. He is talking to the Divine Mother. So we'll discuss it in our next class. So if there are some questions, we can take them. So I think there are no questions in the chat. So I'll take your leave. And as I announced earlier, if we want a proper understanding of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you have to understand his life in great detail, because his life was his message. To understand his message, one has to understand a comprehensive, understand in great depth his life. So we have started the Thursday class on the Great Master, and it is held a little late at 7 to 8. In fact, if many of you find it difficult to attend the class early at 5:30, it will be inconvenient for many people in other countries like India, not in America or Europe, but in India, there are some people who are attending. Already 5:30 is late for them. So I take they were asking if it could be held at 4:30, so that it is just 10 there. Now it is 11, they start the class, which is too late. So then we have to take a decision. If we start at 7, it will be extremely late for Indian devotees. They are few in number, no doubt. So we have to make a choice. We will discuss, because many people were saying it is now most of them have started working. So it is good if the class is at 7. So if you let me know on WhatsApp which time would be more convenient, we can see what a majority of you feel. If it is late, the advantage is the Thursday class is late, because Thursday is anyway not a holiday. Saturday, Sunday is okay. But Thursday, Friday, and even Saturday and Sunday, if you want it a little late, but only the UK devotees, the European devotees, and definitely the American devotees, American continent, they will appreciate this time. So please let me know on WhatsApp which is a preferred time for most of you, and depending on the choice of a majority will decide and finalize the time. So I'll conclude. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.